What's up, Frontline Student Ministries? It's Pastor Matt here. I want to tell you about something cool that is coming up, and that is next week will be the grand finale of our series, Frontline Best Dance Crew. And just to tell you some of the cool things that we're going to be doing, one, we will be giving away some prizes to who's been doing the best TikTok dances each week that we've just seen, like, man, stand out. And we're going to ask you to vote on which one is your favorite, the fan favorite dance of the last few weeks as we've been doing this series. We got a prize for you. We're going to have some interactive games unlike anything we've ever done before, as well as I'm going to give you an updated inside look into our student center, talk about what youth is going to look like maybe moving forward in the next few weeks, give an update on camp. So many things are happening next week. It's going to be a fun night. So if you're getting, if you want to enjoy a fun time where you can laugh, have your friends watch with you, and maybe even walk away winning a prize or having us order a pizza and delivering it to your house, and you need to make sure you join us this next week. Okay, so hey, we got one more topic for you tonight. We want you to enjoy it, but make sure you join us next week.
Touch this. Touch this. Touch this. Touch this. Touch this. Touch this.
What I'm thinking about, like I couldn't breathe, ready to end. The last time I freaked out, I just kept looking down. I just started weighing, asking what I'm thinking about, like I couldn't breathe.
What's up, guys? It's Pastor Matt here. I'm with my good friend, Mr. Adam Lamb here, and we're excited to be with you once again. And I really mean this is an honor for us to have Adam with us. I mean, businessman, beast, dad, bodybuilder. What else would you like to? I'm trying to think of some other actions to describe you here. Would you like?
That's more than I describe. I'm just a regular guy.
just a regular Joe who's accomplished more than you. But we are excited that we can be here. We're going to get to the series and topic, and we're excited about what it's going to look like. But before we do, because you're a guest, we're going to play a game because it's me, and we are playing a game, Would You Rather? And I actually haven't even looked at these. I pulled it up. I read like the first 2 or 3, then I just stopped because I was like, I'd rather us do this together. So
My son and I play this actually it's like almost like a family.
it's a good one.
But Madeline, I'll tell you a quick funny thing.
Yeah.
Like, Madeline would be like, Dad, would you rather fall from a tree or eat tacos? And I'm like, Madeline,
Tough
I would rather eat tacos.
Depends.
Or Michael's like, would you rather be set on fire or drown? I'm
Yeah,
like,
those are
that's
intense. That's
right.
actually one you have to think of. This is considered, I typed in the hardest would you rather questions you can find. They're not, it sounds worse than this. I read it too. First 2, but let's see if it gets bigger. All right, here we go. Would you rather have to read out loud every time you read something, or have everything you say to people come out as if you are singing? Sing everything you say or read everything out loud?
I think I usually talk that way, Danny.
I feel like I read out loud all the time, so.
If I read out loud, they're going to send me back to 4th grade. I lose either way with that. Probably, I would probably want to sing. There's a guy, funny story, that he was the hot dog guy at the Detroit Tiger, at the Comerica Park, where the Tigers play back home. And he was like the yodeling, like beer hot dog guys. Hot dog, and he would do this. He was like on the news. Everybody knew him, like loved him, and that's what he did. Is he would sing the advertisements. Sold more hot dogs than anybody.
Right.
It's like the guy was like a local celebrity, which is pretty funny. So he was cool. He sung his
cool, so he
sung
did
his
good.
words. Yeah.
If you had to call, say there's people out there from all different states, and they're all standing out there in front of you, and you had to call a Michigan person over by just a noise, how would you do it?
That's a good question.
Because if it was Texans, I know what I would do.
What would you do?
Yeah.
I go, you from the mitten or something? I don't know.
Do
That's what we do. Oh, that's where I'm at.
That's where I'm at. I don't think I've ever even heard that.
That's
Really?
Right here.
Yeah.
Up here. I can tell you every city in Michigan.
Does Michigan have a different accent? I feel like I would know what to do.
I don't think so. But people, I don't think so because I don't think I have one because I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, you don't sound like."
Yeah.
I don't know that I sound different.
Yeah, I don't know.
Texans do.
Texas do, baby. Pride. All right, here we go. This one's kind of a definitely youth question, and as I'm reading it, would you rather be transported 20 years into the future or past every time you pass gas, or be transported to a random place every time you sneezed?
Pass gas or sneezed? It would
So,
have to be sneezed. Oh, I'd be all over the place.
If you sneeze, you wouldn't need teleportation if you could sneeze,
I
man.
just
You'd be everywhere.
Right. That's why I think if I choose sneeze or pass gas.
Yeah, it'd be a past gas takes you 20 years in either the past or the future.
Yeah. I'd go insane. I'd just be all over the place.
Well, see, that's the thing.
Sneeze. I don't sneeze.
I'd want to know if the smell traveled with you. To be honest with you, that might
Stinking up decades.
that would be actually. You know, with the decade one, I remember doing a Would You Rather, and this would be going. Would you rather be able to travel 100 years into the past or 100 years into the future?
I think I'd like to go. I love history, but history's done. I think the future gets me excited.
Yeah?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like to know what's to come. Oh, that's the. I love
If you
that.
were 100 years in the future, what's the first thing you do? Boom.
I think I just I want to look around. I want to see where we've come, and I pray that we come in a good way because daily it can be scary, right?
Yeah.
We live in a volatile world, but when we look back at how far we've come, so
Right.
you look 100 years ago, the 1920s wasn't a great time. There was depression and things like that, but airplanes were just now kind of taking you think of how far and fast and the growth factor is compounding, right? So it's like a drum, and now we're where we're going to be in 100 years is going to be exponentially further than where we've come in the last 100. So it's
Right.
I love that stuff. That's why I spend so much, paying attention to science and things like that to see what's coming.
Yeah.
I love that. So,
There's excitement, too.
but it's
in
good
the
stuff.
future.
Even what you're bringing up it's just something good to just think about.
Yeah.
Instead of what's on your YouTube or what's on TV or what's on the news, right? Or what gossip could be happening. Like thinking about what might be there in 100, what will be gone, right? How many jobs will be automated? Like in 100 years, no one will drive a car,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
They'll all be driverless cars,
Right.
Probably in 20 years.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
it's interesting to think about that stuff. I like that. It's a healthy place to put your mind because it breeds creativity.
Right. I agree with that. It's thinking, right?
Mhm.
You got to think. Would you rather have average skill or knowledge in something that everyone respects, or be the world's best at something that most of the world thinks is stupid?
I feel like that's my life.
Stop it. Don't go
No,
even.
I think I would pick the. I'll tell you, it's sad that unfortunately, being pretty good at the things like, listen, we talked about being a great, like sports is fun, but throwing a football real far, dunking a basketball, as much as we put those people on a pedestal,
Right.
the person that's figuring out how certain viruses attach to cells, like that could change lives, like,
Yeah.
that stuff's really cool.
Right.
It's very specific. Most people are like, I don't care. Turn on something that's, so I would gravitate towards I'd like
Yeah.
to be like the best at that one thing that no one really cares about.
Right.
Because to me, those are like world changer things. Unless you're I had a buddy who was like a trivia baseball guy. Like, you could ask him who was the right fielder in the 7th inning of the 1983 World Series on the winning team. And like, he knew it. It was
Yeah.
nuts, man. I mean, like crazy. And so, not that skill, but because it's not as applied, but I think if something else. How about
Right.
you?
I honestly, I think for me, I it's probably maybe even a sense of pride maybe I need to deal with, but I'd like to be the best at something.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if I'm going to be wanting something, and if you're doing the best and you're passionate about it, if I'm passionate about it, I want to be. I'm always striving to be the best,
Yeah.
and so I feel like I don't want to ever just consider
Like,
average.
you got the guy like Michael about the world hot dog eater guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's the best at eating hot dogs in a certain amount of time.
Right.
More people know about him than me,
Yeah.
right? They know. I mean, this guy's Guinness Book. He's got some
Yeah.
recognition, but he's eating hot dogs, right? Like, that's
It's
so,
true.
So that question can be, there's perspective behind that
It
question.
is
about,
very much perspective, and it's going
if
to
it was
come
like
down.
the fastest reader or something like that. Like,
Yeah, something-
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Hot dogs. That could be you. We could have
we
in
should-
our audience.
we could have a hot
the
dog.
new
We should have a
future
hot
hot
dog
dog.
eating contest. I took down 2 Italian sausages last night.
Really? Well, I'll try that then. All right, here we go. I got a real question now for you.
Okay.
This kind of started, I was talking to William A. Horton himself yesterday in the office, and he was telling me he listened to some kind of interview with Tiger Woods, and they asked him if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be? And, of course, if you know about Tiger Woods, incredible golfer, legacy in the middle there, in a sense of as character, gets tainted by a few immoral decisions. And you would think, and I think this is what William was saying. He was like, he was like asking us to guess. And of course, I'm there, and I was guessing something like that, like maybe not getting involved with some of those women and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But he was like, no, it came down to it. He was like, I tell my younger self, I believe it was not to run 30 miles a week. That was way too much, and it's damaged and destroyed my knees and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. And it was just, to me, it was interesting. So I'm asking you this question.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
It's interesting because, like I said, immediately our brain goes to the surface, right?
Yep.
And I'm thinking like real world, earthly things. But I think that if I were taking it deeper, right? Because the question makes me assess like my behaviors, my thought processes, like what is there that doesn't serve me that possibly was a habit formed early,
Yeah.
right? And I think that my advice to my younger me would be to not worry what other people think.
Mm.
In some cases, it's important, but the most freeing thing in my life was deciding, like, I care what my kids think because I'm their father and I want them to look up to me. I care what my wife thinks. That's it, right? And that's also what's led me to be self-employed. Like, I'm my own boss. Like, I don't have to like tighten it up for the boss. And I know not everybody's in that situation, but that in itself can be so freeing. When I think of how often we're like trapped behind what someone thinks, whether we're doing something because we want to please someone or we want that outcome, or just like we're changing our shirt 16 times before we leave the house because we think someone's going to care way more than they're going to, right? And that in itself can just be such a prison of a way to live by always worrying about that, what other people think, you know? And so I think being cognizant of it, because there's just a matter of being polite, like, you know, being a good person and things like that because you want to be. But there's another part of like, you gotta be you, you know, I think, and not worry about what other people think. That was something, I think it hurts young people, and they go on a path that they're like, mom and dad want me to be a doctor, but like, and then things don't work, or because maybe their passion is something else, right? And so I think that's something to really have that self-assessment, is really asking yourself, am I doing this because this is something that really in my heart is for me, or am I doing this because of outside recognition or things like that, right? And that goes into a lot of the stuff we talk about, peer pressure, right?
Right.
Peer pressure is part of that too.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, yeah, for me, just that advice would be to just don't worry about other people's opinions as much, and I think that's one of the most freeing things that we can do.
And
How about you?
No, I mean, for me, honestly now, and it's a lot of it for me is perspective. And I want to talk more about what you just said because it's so good. But for me, is perspective. I think as a young father, I took for granted a lot of the things that my parents did for me growing up. And I did not understand the weight of some of the decisions that they were helping make for me. Some of the understanding. I wish I could go back in time, truthfully, not necessarily to give myself a piece of advice, but to give myself like a better perspective on what's happening, like why this stage, certain things that were going on, why my parents were doing certain things, taking better notes now.
Well, I'll tell you something I think will hit home, especially for you and your age.
Yeah.
Because my mom and I had an argument one time with my son, just kind of, I'm pretty strict, but not unstrict. Like there's not a moment of any of my children's day do they doubt whether dad loves them, right?
Yeah.
We still hug, we kiss on the lips. There's a affection, and you know, we know there's love, right? And there's never any of that like go to bed and not say, like there's none of that stuff, right? So, but I'm strict because I believe I want my kid to be in that top % of life, health and focus on all the great things, right? And I think that as parents, the biggest, toughest job is preparing our kids for the rest of their life, not making them happy right now. And so what I said to my mom that I think will hold true is something like, is I said, Mom, I don't care what my 10-year-old son thinks of me. I care what my 25-year-old son thinks of me. And everything I'm doing today is for that. Because if it was up to him, he'd eat Fruit Loops all day and play Xbox 24/7. Right? So, but if I let him do that, at 25, he's going to resent me. But if I have him focused, I make him read things, eventually will come around. I hated reading, but eventually I loved it, right? And so guiding my kid in a direction that's going to benefit them for the rest of their life, not just satisfy them now, not just make them happy now. And that it goes into some of the stuff we're going to talk about later too. And I think it's tough, but it's back to the perspective is realizing that there's a lot your parents put into you, right? And not all parents are perfect. Like, dude, the biggest thing I learned as an adult is adults don't have it all figured out.
Right.
They don't, right? So don't put all that pressure on them either. And as parents, we can't have all that pressure on us because, like, we got to figure it out. Like when my son was born, first diaper I ever changed was my son's. The first one my wife changed was his second poop because I did the first one. You know what I mean? Like, we figured it out. And when we joked that, we're like, hey, there's people dumber than us that figure this out. We'll be all right.
It's reassuring.
Right,
Isn't
we'll
it?
figure it out. Like people will figure it out. And so going through life and failing and, you know, is part of life. Like when you're not failing, you're probably not trying hard enough.
Right.
But I think that, like you said, that perspective is, you know, we're doing things today, like this video, this conversation isn't for tomorrow. It can impact tomorrow.
Yeah.
But it's really for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
All right. The goal is for people to take away things that can really change their life. You know, and so when you look at happy, successful people that are in their 40s and 50s, all of them will tell you about influential people or conversations or changes and things like that they did in their younger years that put them there, right? Same if you ask Tiger, that conversation. But if you ask Tiger, what influential thing, what moments, he'll have some moments that really change. He'll have some moments that took another course too, right? There's a positive and negative one. So I think, but that perspective, being a young parent, it's good. I look back at it now, but it just gets easier.
Yeah.
Stay confident.
Hey, that's going to be my goal. I was thinking while you're even talking about that too, because it goes in with our topic. We're doing a series. In case you don't know and you're with us for the first time, Frontline Best Dance Crew, we are talking about the issues that we would normally or be more comfortable with just dancing around. And we want to get kind of really real with it. And when we say dancing around, we're not just talking about yourself if you're dancing around so that no one knows about it or so you don't have to deal with it, but also us as communicators, we want to talk about this and not just dance around some of these subjects, even if it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. And so, I was even thinking perspective, and while you were even talking that, I was thinking about even myself, kind of like where you're focused at and looking. I think one of the hardest things for probably myself when I was younger is I was always, I was hearing about your future and trying to think, but a lot of times I thought, well, I'm living in the moment, and you hear that a lot with students you can tell me about how things are going to affect me way down the road or way down the line, but right now I can't see anything else outside of the fun that I'm having.
I think most people spend their life living in the moment.
Right.
And that is the root of regret.
Right. It's true. C.S. Lewis has a quote, and he says, if you aim at earth, you'll miss heaven. Yeah. But if you aim at heaven, you'll get earth thrown in. Yeah. And and the difference is all about what you're focused at and where you're headed in direction. Today we're going to be trying to talk about a few, and we might talk about different ones as we go, and that's completely okay. But the subjects, some dealing with with alcohol, with dealing with kind of cultural pressures, which can lead into many different things, not just alcohol, but then also kind of the motives. And we've already touched a little bit about motive, but going to really kind of talk about why we do the things we do, and who are we doing them for, and kind of weighing that out. And I'm believing it's going to be really cool. I want to start with this, Adam, because one of the reasons I asked you here was just simply because you bring with yourself a different perspective than mine. And let's even kind of going into some of these topics right here, going with, whether that be alcohol or even cultural pressures or different things outside of it. I feel like for me, I've never experienced alcohol. I don't know what that's like. And for me growing up, there was a day that my reasoning for why completely changed. And it wasn't for a lack of opportunity. I was invited many times, but for me, it was more out of, the reason I didn't do it was more out of fear of disappointing somebody, because I had a really high respect for my parents growing up, and we had a healthy relationship like you. It was the I care more about your future than your feelings. My dad always said, I'm your dad, I'm not your best friend. Right. I mean, like, I had that. I've had that conversation, my 10-month-old, and he didn't know what I'm saying. I'm your dad. And but with that, so I think for me, it was interesting because kind of growing up, I had opportunities to indulge in some things. There was the pressures that were around me, and it wasn't that those pressures and stuff wasn't getting to me. It was just they weren't more than a fear of my parents. And it was kind of, and I don't even know, I wonder sometimes that, because my father was also kind of the pastor, and one of the things I remember growing up is I didn't want to be the thing that tainted like my father's reputation. And I remember that was good in a sense, like, okay, that could be good in the sense that it kept me from doing certain things. But as I started getting older, I was a really good kid in elementary. I was a great kid. Middle school, I started to get a little bit braver, and I started kind of testing some things. High school, way more. And as it progressed even to college, and what I found is that fear that I had that maybe kept me from doing certain things started going down. Oh, yeah. And it started going down really quick. And I understood that if that didn't change, my motives from not doing something simply out of fear versus really kind of understanding why I'm choosing this or why maybe my parents set up certain boundaries. If that didn't change, that was never going to last for me. And I think sometimes we can look, and maybe even a student watching this, and it's like, well, I haven't done some of these things. Yes, you may not have done that, but if your motive for why is not correct, that doesn't mean you won't do it.
Right.
If that makes sense, kind of thought.
I agree.
And so kind of talking with you, Adam, kind of sharing a little bit of your story and kind of, because one of the things that interested me the most was when I first met you, you were like this. To me, it was kind of like meeting a celebrity that you didn't know that you admired before we met. I had heard about you before I met you. And mainly because you checked off, it was like Man Crush Monday. And I was like, oh yeah, this is the dude. It's just like, you checked off my boxes. I was like, man, I was big into fitness. I was like, this dude's like former bodybuilder, like chiseled dream right there. And then as well, you had written a book, and you given one copy to my dad, which I stole from him, obviously. Better than the binge, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of would just, and it was so interesting to me about when you wrote that, why you wrote that, and kind of just some of the lessons, and maybe you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Some of this kind of your upbringing versus some of the culture pressures you faced, and maybe not even just alcohol, but some of the other things that you found and motives for why.
It all ties together, right? And so we as young people, like you said, that a lot of the reason we don't do stuff, I'll never forget. This is kind of goofy and silly, but to back up that fear, my fear wasn't, and I think it's good. I'll tell you something. I'll do a freebie. Is your fear of misrepresentation of your father's name? That's good. That's a good honorable way to live.
Right.
Period. I would love my son at this age to be saying that was why he didn't do things.
Yeah.
Because that's right. And a step further, though, is our Heavenly Father.
Yeah.
Is if you're walking around claiming Jesus,
And that's the truth of
and
it.
you're not living it, you're tarnishing that name as what it means to either non-believers. You're like, oh, the
As a
dude that
Christian.
hooks up with every chick and gets drunk
Yeah.
all the time. Yeah, okay.
Right.
I'll
I'll be
I
that
get
kind
it.
of Christian.
Right, and so that tarnishes that father's name. So that if we were just to wrap the video up now, that's that I think is a good. You hit the nail on the head right there. But I think going back, we have, like you said, that fear drops, and I'll share a stupid story. But when I grew up, so I'm older than you. I grew up in when I was young in my elementary, early junior high was in the 80s, and the biggest fear craze in the 80s was HIV and AIDS.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't understand it. I remember like on TV seeing these like rock star guys with their stuff. I was like, they all must have. They might look like they live a life like that. I thought you could catch that by kissing. I thought anyone that had sex would get it.
Yeah.
Like that's the way I was, like in my head, that's what it was. And I remember it was in junior high, I was like someone's party, and I kissed this girl. And I came home the night, I stayed the night at my buddy's house. Like he had the guy-girl kind of hang out, and I kissed this girl. It was my first kiss.
Woo!
Like first real kiss. and then like the guys all stayed the night. And the next morning, like I came home and I like couldn't sleep. Like my mom was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "Oh, what's wrong? I don't want to talk about it." And she's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "I got AIDS." And she was like, "What?" And so she's freaking out because she's like, "What did you do?" And I was like, "I kissed Kelly O'Ryan," and she's like, "What else?" And I'm like, "That's it." She's like, "And I'm, that doesn't work that way."
Right.
But that was my fear.
Yeah.
Fast forward to later years, like I didn't have that fear, right?
Yeah.
And so the part of what goes to that fear dropping is testing the water, right? But there's a healthy reason why we're fearful for certain behaviors, and instinctually we know that some of the outcomes can be bad, right? And whether we're talking about alcohol, sex, any of those things, there's other things beyond the surface of like, oh, dude, just a couple guys having a couple beers.
Yeah.
Sure. Theoretically, that's not a bad thing. But what you don't realize is that couple of guys having a couple beers turns into alcoholism later. And maybe not both guys. Maybe one of the guys is fine, but the other guy, it wrecks a marriage and destroys children's lives. And like alcohol is a serious, like there's a major, go to downtown Houston and you see all the folks that don't have a home. Most of them, alcohol or drugs, right? But most, they say that marijuana is a gateway drug. Alcohol is a gateway drug.
Yeah.
Most people that get into drugs start because they're drinking and then do a drug.
Yeah,
Right?
it's true.
And so when I was younger, I think I struggled. My parents were divorced, and for some reason I felt like I didn't fit in. And so the kids that I found myself fitting in with were some of the other single parent kids who, and for some reason we were able to get around, parental supervision by, you just, it was weird, like just gravitating to that, and like next thing you know, you're trying cigarettes and like, oh, I'm scared, I'm try it. And the next thing you know, like, I didn't die. Oh, I could have, right? So I'm testing these things. And then but I think what happens is we're searching for this feeling of significance, right? Mm-hmm. So I think when as a kid, I look back at, like, I would have much rather felt the significance of being part of a good winning football team than being the guy that, got in a fight at the party or chugged the beer the fast, like any of that stuff, right? But if you don't feel you're worth a better talent or a better, maybe you're great. If you get straight A's, maybe that's your platform. But if, like me, I didn't get good grades, but I could, so alcohol and partying and socializing and some of those things became where I felt good about myself, but it was false. Right? It's like Groundhog Day. Like every day that you were fulfilling a false satisfactory, like a false recognition of worth, the next day you wake up and it's gone again. Yeah. Right? There's no trophy. There's no diploma. There's no
just a fantasy
paycheck, right? That goes into that. And so I think that early I started just drinking because, the biggest excuse I think that we all use is because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah.
Right? And so, and I look back at that and it's so false because I graduated high school. I think it was like 430 students. I was like 398. I was not good in school. Barely graduated high school. And a lot of it was because I didn't care. I got so much more gratification of hanging out, drinking, and being the fun party guy, getting a little trouble at school, and that drama that comes along with it. Like, that guy got suspended. Mm-hmm. He told the principal, blah, blah, But I look back at that, and I'm like, gosh, I was so stupid.
Yeah.
I much would have rather used my talents elsewhere. I was an incredible athlete. I got in too much trouble to play sports in high school, right? Like, there's so many other things, that interest me today. When you think of things turned out, but because of massive discipline and a lot more work than I think most people should have to put into it, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I found was just that connection with drinking, and everyone else is doing it, and those kind of things. And that led to, I got out of high school, had no real direction. I was like a cook in a restaurant for a little while, and then I ended up working as like a waiting tables. But the restaurant place, it's a breeding ground for hanging out and drinking after work and stuff like that, like for sure. And then ended up working in nightclubs and things like that. So I'm working in these like crazy, like the coolest place in Michigan to work in a nightclub I worked at. There was a lot of partying there, drinking and those kind of things. And that was, but you got that gratification. Like I worked at a place called Clutch Cargoes when I was like 20 years old, which was like the nightclub, like I'd have like a free pass. Like that was like, you're the coolest guy in the world. Like we were just joking about this, some friends of mine the other day, that it was a different world of, and young age being in that environment. And we did that. Right. And the sad thing is, and not to take away from any of my friends that were in that place, is a lot of those people that just never left that, crashed and burnt, right? Because unless you're wanting more, unless you're looking for more in life, and I look back at that now in all honesty, and it's not about the money or the success, but like, if I knew what I knew now, if I had a mentor like me at that age, my mentors, the guys I looked up with, were the guys that taking on the good-looking girl that could be, the big buff bouncer at the bar. Like those are the guys. I was looking up to the wrong people. But if I was looking up to the people that were actually focused on building success, working every day today for that future, I would be light years ahead of where I'm at. I think a lot of people don't believe that they can actually do that. But what's easy is to go home and drink 3 or 4 beers and just kind of forget about it, right? And that's what that trap that I think we get into. And I was one of those too. So even though, I found some success in business and family, married, kids, there was some internal success, that gratification, that real success. Like you're always gonna, like when we talk about sin and the flesh, like you're always gonna want more. It's just like having a snack or food. Like you're just gonna be hungry again, right?
Yeah.
It's not gonna. It's you're never satisfied if you're chasing the wrong thing. And
Right.
I was like, whether it was money, success, or drinking and socialization, getting that gratification or acceptance from other people and things like that, but really not accomplishing what I wanted to. And a lot of that is just how you view yourself, right? So when your self-worth is low, which is unfortunately prevalent with young people nowadays, because we have so many things we look at that make us, you're not as good looking as this person. You're not as fit as that person. You're not all these things that we have at our fingertips with technology to remind us how we don't measure up if we're measuring up to the wrong thing, right? And so that can lead us to searching for other ways to feel good,
Right.
even though they're false, right? Whether it's dressing a certain way because, well, when I wear this outfit, I get a lot of looks from
Yeah.
the guys, and that makes me feel good. But it's false because those guys aren't looking at you thinking, wow, you are probably an upstanding, intelligent woman. They're thinking you might be an easy opportunity,
Yeah.
right? And that's not something to hang your hat on.
Right.
But when you're young and you don't understand it, the first reason I started working out is when I started working out, I got more attention from girls.
Yeah.
And what got me into bodybuilding, the full transparency, is one of my best friends, Rob. He's like, well, you're married now. So after I got married, he's like, you quit working out? And I was like, no. He's like, well, you can't, who cares about the girls now? You're married. And I was like, I'm going to get into bodybuilding because I really like to work out.
Yeah.
Right. And so I got into a bodybuilding career, just literally because of that conversation. He's
Wow.
like, you won't do that. And I was like, oh, yes, I will. And that goes to the why behind what we do things. My why wasn't really healthy because through the bodybuilding, I was still feeding my ego. I was still being like, I want to be the guy, like, they're looking at me, and so it wasn't because I was like, now today, like, I want to be healthy. I want to be fit. I want to be this great health example for my kids. I want to be a great health example for people, anyone that I know, someone that just lives it, breathes it, does it, right? And so part of that was, and that's where I kind of started looking at the drinking. And almost 3 years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm this health guy. People know me as a health guy and all that, but alcohol has had a negative place in my life forever. Listen, there's guys that maybe have a beer every night, like whatever. If you're an adult and you want to have a drink once in a while, like I don't knock that. But when you lose control of that, and how I've defined it to folks, and it's, no one goes into, no young people go into drinking like everyone else is doing it, just a couple beer, like it's okay, but
Right.
they don't know that you can have a predisposition for alcoholism, like it's poison, right?
Yeah.
And so if I went back in time, I would have just never drank. Where I could be today if I never did that, right? And I'm not in a bad place.
Yeah.
But if you shoot for the earth, you might
Sure.
come up short. But if you shoot for heaven, you might
Right.
get the earth too. And so I think in hindsight, but that's another justification. Well, not that bad, right? But I know it could have been so much better,
Right.
And so when I got, about 3 years ago, so late 30s, 37-ish, 36-ish, whatever, one of those, I decided I'd look at my life. So my father was an alcoholic. His alcoholism was the reason my parents got divorced. And so at a young age, alcohol was always like taboo, bad, right? In my head, I'm like, why did Dad choose alcohol over me,
Yeah.
right? And I want, not to make people feel bad, but I want parents to think about that.
Right.
Could your children think
Yeah.
you were choosing alcohol over them?
Right.
And it doesn't mean divorce or DUI. It means, are they feeling like Dad chooses to do, or Mom chooses to do this over something I want, right? Let that hit home, let it sink in, make you feel bad. And I'll tell you about a time that made me feel bad. And so I always thought that. And then as I got older, I got into, I'm trying to think, first time I drank, maybe 9th grade or something like that. I think my buddy's mom had like Zimas, we had wine coolers. That's what it was. We were at my buddy's house and we stole his stepmom's wine coolers. When I was,
my goodness.
and I remember we each had a wine cooler or something like that. And I remember we had push scooters and riding the scooters. I was like, wow, and I hit a tree limb over the sidewalk, knocked me back.
Oh my goodness.
And then I remember I just, that was it. That was like my first time doing it. And then so it took away a little bit of that fear of the stigma to it. But the reality is all that fear is still there. Like I still ended up with a drinking problem in high school, right? I still can think of all my buddies, how many people I know that have had alcohol just terrorize their life.
Yeah.
But when we first had that wine cooler, we weren't thinking about that.
Mm.
That Zima, I think, was the next thing I tried. We weren't thinking about that, right? But when you're at funerals, and you see the divorce rate super high, and you see people lose their jobs, and then you're like, dang, there might be some truth to the
Right.
bad side of alcohol. And so going through that, I look back, so I kind of had this like awakening early 30s, being a, father. My daughter was born. It was a real awakening to me of like, am I being the best I can, or am I like just like trying to not look as bad as the rest? A lot of us go through our life trying to just be better than the rest. So it's like, don't pick on me. Like I wasn't first at the race,
Right.
but I wasn't last. The last guy's over there.
Yeah.
I don't want to focus on anything. I got to change.
Right.
And so for a book I highly recommend, and until I came to know the Lord, it was the number one book I knew. It was called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Get that book. Read that book now. Read it again in 5 years. Read it again in another 5 years, because your perspective will change and the book will speak to you, just like the Bible does, right?
Right.
And that book really made me stop and go, hey, Adam, you got to work on this stuff. It's not because your dad left. It's not because of this. It's not because of your 5'9", not 6'. Like, it's not because of that. It's because your perspective on everything, right? It's because the excuses you make. It's the things you accept as a standard. And so that book got me reading more books, right? And so I read a few hundred books. And then when you really, really go on that self-discovery path, the lights are on. And the elephants that were in the room kind of, you're like, I don't see them over there. They go away. I'm sorry, you see them. They don't go away. They're bright light, and you have to address them. And alcohol was something that was like, all right, I eat clean. I promote this health life. I have a sports supplement. I have another company that does health. I'm like, but I drink 2 or 3 vodkas every day, right? Or I have a glass of wine or two. And a glass of wine or two every night isn't terrible. I don't think it's good. But it was the sometimes that I had more.
Yeah.
And, when I help a lot of folks change their relationship with alcohol, whether it's stopping or limiting or just viewing how they see alcohol, more on the adult side. But one of the things we say is that if you ever drink to intoxication, you probably have a bad relationship with alcohol. If you never drink to intoxication, it only takes that one time.
Yeah.
Right? And it only takes a pandemic, or it takes a divorce, or it takes a death in the family.
Yeah.
And then I've seen so many times, that spiral, that, how many friends have shared, and it's not exposed. People don't post it on their Facebook. They don't post that they're drinking bottles of red wine at night, so they throw up. But when you see them in real life, high functioning, successful, they can put on the smile. Oh, everything's great, man. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But you don't know that the demons inside of me are so bad. And what happens with alcohol is we think, oh, another rough day.
Right.
Or another, whatever it is. And what it does is it feeds the demon. Anxiety goes through the roof and all these things. And then you start doing other bad things, right? Not to mention alcohol leads to bad decisions.
Yeah.
Every just about bad decision I made in my younger years, alcohol was part of it, right? And so you didn't mean to be in that situation, but you weren't fully you because you chose to be at this place you shouldn't have been at because the parents weren't there, and then you chose to drink the alcohol that you're not supposed to. Like, when we look back at this stuff, Billy was a bad guy, but there's a lot of things that could have saved the situation, right? And so all that has to be in perspective. So I decided, so my father passed away in 2015, literally drank himself to death. So in his 50s, he drank, and it finally ruined his frontal lobe of his brain. So it was like he had dementia or Alzheimer's, onset from alcohol. So that was awakening for me. I'm like, what's if that could be me, right? Even the couple drinks a night, the social drink guy, I don't want that. Like, my brain has now become my favorite part about my body. It used to be my pecs, right? But now it's, because this matters, this is going to carry me way longer. There's going to come a time when your body's not going to look that good. You know what I mean? There's going to come a time where you're going to be like, you might catch yourself in the mirror naked and be like, whoa, what happened? Some skinny old dude. But I want to be a skinny old dude that's real smart still, that's cognitive, that's still fun. I don't want to be the burned out guy at 60, right?
Yeah.
Because I was living in the moment, all the other parts of my life. And so I kind of had that awakening, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to take some time off drinking. I took 30 days off. I was like, all right, you know, and I'm a type of guy, like I like discipline. I like to push myself. Just the other day, so I did like a 42-hour fast. Saturday night at dinner, didn't eat again until yesterday. So lunch, I think is when I ate. But I was only going to do 24 hours, just Sunday. But then I'm like, keep going, right? So not everybody's geared that way, and it can be helpful to want to, because I've found that when I'm in moments of challenge, moments of struggle, I'm usually on the edge of a breakthrough of something, whether it's just self-worth or a business, you know, like work, like whatever it might be. So I operate really good when I'm uncomfortable, and I really promote that for other people. Is to, if you're always comfortable, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, right? But so I pushed another 60 days, 90 days, and I navigated it, and I got to 90 days, and I was like, I'll never drink again, right? So think of a guy that drank a big part of my life. I mean, you know, from 15 or 14, something like the first drink to, you know, let's say 36, you know, call it 20 years. And alcohol was a major foundation of a lot of the things I did. Going out, all that kind of stuff. To rip it away and say, never again, because I realized how foolish it was. I realized that the negatives far outweighed the positives. It wasn't just a drink. Like, I was like, I don't need alcohol to have fun.
Right.
You know, if you and I were sitting here having this conversation, I'm way more valuable than if we were drinking at the same time, because then it kind of just, your brain's not as sharp. You're not as good as you think you are after your free drinks, right?
Yeah.
That's why we have drinking and driving problems and rules around alcohol consumption and things like that, because you're not as, you think you are, you're not as good looking, you're not like all these things, right? There's that false feeling. That guy that you think might like you a lot might not. He might not think that you're beautiful. He might like the way that you're dressed, and he has a different motive than what you're hoping for, which could lead to a bad outcome because your judgment is impaired because of alcohol.
Yeah.
And when you drink for longer periods of time, that's how you live your life. Your judgment, how you manage your problems, like all these kind of things can happen. And so I would look back and I was like, wow, I solve problems better, I sleep better, I'm healthier. I've like released this. I mean, it was almost like we think about, this is, you know, before I came to know the Lord, but when you think of like how Jesus is like, you know, the salvation, right?
Yeah.
It was that kind of feeling. I just was like, I'm no longer bound to what could happen with alcohol. I'm no longer bound to that feeling of hungover, withdrawal, even if you just have a drink or two. Like you know, it's people are like, oh, I just have a couple of drinks, but when you go 30 days with zero, and you will go, oh yeah, those 2 glasses of wine actually do negatively affect me, right?
Yeah.
And so I quit drinking, and I didn't want to go around telling everybody what they should do, so I figured I'll write a book. And if they're interested, they'll read the book.
Yeah.
I'll create a comfortable environment, which hopefully I've always created for like a youth group and other people that to say like, you can come with me for anything.
Yeah.
You know, and in this particular situation was like, listen, if you want to have a conversation where someone's not going to judge you and try to label you and tell you what you got to do next, when it comes to alcohol, let's talk, right? And so in that book, I tell some stories, and one of them with my son, though, that really hit home. It was like every time I think about it, I almost get pretty emotional. Is there's a time we had a bunch of people over, we lived on the lake, kind of had a party, and kids went to bed, and I drank more than I should. I was buzzed up, you know, loss of balance. And I remember coming in the house, and my son kind of snuck downstairs, and I was like sliding on the wall almost, right? And he was like terrified. What's wrong with Dad? What's going on with Dad? You know, and I'll never forget that. And that was when I was like, it's not okay. I'm not it's never okay to be this intoxicated, but this is not right. I would, if someone else put that same fear in my son, I'd throw him through a window, right?
Yeah.
So who am I to put that in there just out of carelessness, right? And so that was something, and I think that adults that drink probably a little too much should think about how it's affecting their kids.
Yeah.
Because guess what your kids are going to do? They're going to grow up and they're going to know that's how to have fun, and they're going to keep repeating it, right? Like I come from a long line of alcoholics, and I hope that I broke the cycle myself and that it won't continue my son. And I'm open about it. I'm like, listen, man, That stuff's in your blood. Like, drinking's bad. Don't do it, right? You're going to see other people do it, and it's okay, but it's not for you. It can easily go from just a couple drinks to like a mega part of your life
Right.
in a bad way. Right?
Yeah.
And so I wrote the book, and I've done that. I've helped hundreds of people actually stop drinking just through kind of coaching them and things like that, because it's a passion of mine. I know that it's not about your drinking problem as much as what your drinking problem is holding you back from by fulfilling other people. I know that if I wouldn't have quit drinking, I wouldn't have known to come to have come to know the Lord, because I just was too fogged. I didn't realize I was in a fog until the fog was lifted. And I was like, whoa, I can see. I became more in touch with myself. I became more in touch with problem solving and all that, which ultimately led me being open to receive God,
Yeah.
right? And so alcohol can hold you back from a lot of really great things. And so I'm glad that's out of my life. And I think that I look at alcohol and think it's just it's just overdone how good it is. The commercials, like if I had one of my secret missions I'll share with everybody here is I would love to be part of taking away commercialization and marketing of alcohol, just like cigarettes.
Yeah.
Right? There's no cigarette ad. Alcohol's just as bad. It's worse.
Yeah.
And so, we see these guys like winning the championship and
Yeah.
choosing, like what it does is it says, this is how I celebrate.
Yeah.
This is how I connect.
Right.
This is how I have fun. And it's the worst advice ever, and it's got to change.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't think big picture that's what big picture wants. So I think people need to get outside of the norm, get outside of what everyone else is doing, and be the individual and make that decision for themselves to just not do it.
Yeah.
You're not missing anything.
Right. Man, it's such a powerful story in itself, and even when you tell all the details, it's incredible. I was listening to that, and we weigh out like the motive for everything, and I said this quote earlier, and we say it quite often. If you hang around me, you'll hear me say it. And I probably asked you this question: why we do the things we do, and who we do them for. And if you were to split that into two parts, and you say just the first part, why we do the things we do, there's so many things you can use to try and justify an action. I could throw anything. I literally say you can literally try and use. You could justify anything.
Yep.
I mean, you really could. You could justify. I could use cultural pressures to justify why I'm doing this.
Yep.
I could use my upbringing, my situation, my home life. I heard a story one time, and the story was about two twins. And it was looking later on in their life. And these twins, they both grew up, obviously, brothers grew up in the same home, same parents. And their father was an extreme alcoholic. And they did is this guy would interview these two twin boys 30 years later from their birth. So when they're 30 years old, and they both got their families. One of them he came up to, and this guy has pretty much become his father. I mean, literally alcoholic. And just kind of family going down kind of the same path. And he asked him the question, hey, why are you like this today? And he says, well, what did you expect? You know who my father was. My father was an alcoholic. Right. Then he goes to the other twin. This twin brother, he's got great home, loving family, doing good, not drinking at all. And he goes, why are you this way? And he goes, well, you knew who my father was. My father was an alcoholic. Yeah. Same situation, but two different ways of looking at it. And when I said that story, it's a great example. You can literally use anything to justify it.
It's perspective.
And it is perspective.
And going back to judging, like I talked about the race and being like, well, I know I was first, but I'm not the last guy.
Right,
Meaning,
exactly.
I bet, like, I can look at my situation and I was like, I've accomplished more than both my parents. Like, financially, I've been married longer than my parents were married. Like, my kids, like all these things, I've like check. But it's like, but you're still doing that one thing, right? And people, there's a little too much warm and fuzzy around acceptance in the world today. And I think that we need to be a little bit more focused on what we need to work on. Not beating ourselves up like we're not good enough and these kind of things, but just looking at it, because a lot of times, man, we'll get our hair done. We'll change my name from, instead of Adam Lamb, to Adam Steven. I'll update my Facebook profile. Maybe I'll dye my hair pink, or maybe I'll get a new shirt. I'll dress different. But there's a core thing that I'm not changing that is changing all these other things, right? Mm-hmm. And that was the elephant in the room for me, was the alcohol. Yeah. Is because I didn't want to be like my parents. I didn't want my kids to grow up the way my dad did, or the way I did with my parents, right? And so I was working on the financial side of that because I knew that money was an issue. I was working on having a great relationship with my wife because my parents didn't have a great relationship because my dad's drinking, but I had it under control. And then eventually I was like, I woke up enough to go, listen, dude, you got to get the alcohol factor is too prevalent, and once that went away, I realized what went with it was it's like having a bomb sitting here. And I'm like, that's an old bomb. It won't go off. Timer's not going off. You're still thinking about the dang bomb, right? And so as long as that bomb's there, your focus is still thinking about the bomb. And there's a bomb somewhere in all of our lives. Or we're about to pick up something that looks like a firecracker that's going to turn into a bomb through habit behavior, right? And I had to get that bomb. Once I took that bomb out of my life, I accepted that's the bomb.
Right.
I feel like the bomb's not going to blow up. And I took that bomb, which is alcohol, out of my life. I was like, whoa, I'm so free to do these things because I'm not focused on that bomb anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And business took off. My relationship took off. Like health took off. Like I look better. It sounds, but I look better from what I hear from people who know me. Like skin, everything. Like I look younger and healthier than I did then.
Yeah.
Right? But I got older. And so there's so many good things that come from that. But I had to get rid of that. But the bomb has always been there on my table. Right?
Right.
So sometimes we don't get rid of things that are hurting us because they've always been there. Or that's how my dad did it, that's how my mom did it, and things like that. And so it's accepted. It's more comfortable to keep the poison than to get rid of it. You know what I mean?
Man, I heard something, you made me think of that, and it was, I heard this statement, now it's a question, and you can even answer this, is why is it so hard for people to let go of something bad? Why is it so hard for people to let go of something even when they know it's bad? And I think familiar could be maybe even one of the reasons, but...
Well, I think it's comfort. That there's comfort. Yeah, there's some reality with discipline, right? So discipline's tough. You want to... The most disciplined people are usually the happiest. Not the most strict, because sometimes that can carry over to self-worth and problems like that. But discipline, meaning like, this is what's important to me, right? Whether it's, hey, if it's important to me to read the Bible every day, and I don't read the Bible every day, whether I acknowledge it or not, there's a part of that that's making me not feel good, right? And so I think that too often we, out of comfort, like smoking, right? Every time a smoker smokes a cigarette, they know they should quit, and it's not good for them. Every time. You ask any smoker, they put that in their mouth, and they light that up, in their head they're going, I should quit, right? They know they should, but they're physically addicted, and they're also attached because it's part of what they do, right?
Right.
And it goes to the habits and behaviors and things like that.
Yeah, I was thinking back to, you go to the story of Adam and Eve, and you look into the fall of man, right? Sin entering the world, and it's so funny because we think, how did they mess this up, right? It's like, how did they ruin this? I mean, you had this beautiful place that God has created, this perfect place. And yet, because love was something that God wanted between us and Him, He had to set up the boundaries and give us the freedom to choose it. And so He places in the middle of the garden, right, the tree. Don't eat from the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. And the enemy is so sneaky about how he goes up to him. But the thing about it is that the fruit that was there, the Bible says it looked good and pleasing. Like, it wasn't like there was this, skull sign on the front that said poison, stay away, or death on the label. It was like something that looks kind of like, I thought about when you said commercial and marketing. And we have something that we
Satan
have
was
looked.
a marketer.
Oh, he's like the grand marketer. He's going around at something that...
So pay attention to what's what.
Maybe that should be something. Look at what's being marketed as good.
I plan to tie that up because it is, but Satan was he's a master manipulator, right? Great influencer, great marketer. And not only he'll get you to eat the fruit, he'll get you to feel good about the fruit.
Right.
He'll get you to believe you deserve the fruit.
Yeah.
But eventually, when the marketing goes away, when the propaganda stops, and you deal with yourself, you're smart enough to go, oops. But maybe you feel like you went too far,
Yeah.
right? I think a lot of problems, Christians, they step away from God and sometimes feel like they're too far away to come back.
Yeah.
And so then it can happen with us, and then that now becomes that life. I guess I stay over here, and you don't have to.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's a great story about the fruit. It's like anything. You watch these movies of, you see like the young high school party, parents are out of town, the kids are all having a blast and being funny.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to watch that and not go, man, that looks like fun.
Yeah.
I can think of that. But if it'd be great if they could take that movie and go, let me show you where these 20 people were
Yeah.
later, and you have this guy, this guy's dead, this guy never got, and you see like, sure, a couple people, it's just a dice roll you don't want to do. It's not worth it.
Right.
I look back, I've done everything you can think of, right? There's every crazy party. I've partied with rock stars. I've hung out with celebrities. Their clients might there's nothing great there. As much, the hype isn't worth it. I've done it all. I've seen it. There's like nothing, like on my list I was thinking today of like, what are some things in my life that like, I want to go skiing in Switzerland was something I thought about today. But like, it isn't celebrities. It isn't parties. It isn't these things, these stuff things that we go into. And I've hadn't experienced a lot of that stuff. And, firsthand, it's just not that
Yeah.
great.
Right.
Most things, I think, actually, the fruit probably wasn't as good.
Yeah.
Probably looked at the fruit and was like, that is a beautiful fruit. I know I'm not supposed to have it, so there's a little bit of thrill in that. And then bit the fruit, probably was like, it's not that good.
Yeah.
And I think that if you asked Adam and Eve after, they would have never ate the fruit.
Right.
All right. But that's a part. But even after they ate the fruit, the devil's job isn't to get them to eat the fruit, right? Just like the devil's job isn't to get you to just sin. The devil's job is to keep you sinning
Right.
further away from God.
Yeah.
Feel good about this. You deserve it, Matt.
Right.
Come on. You've been committed to your wife for 10 years, and
Yeah.
like those things are, man, you got straight A's. You deserve that. Like the devil will help justify. Master manipulator.
Yeah.
Great marketing person, right?
Right.
And that's a great point.
I think one of the marketing schemes too is it always promises more than it can ever deliver.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think so many people probably, even when you look into the why and they're like, why am I doing this? And you're like, well, take whatever angle they use to justify it, whether that be they're trying to escape something, they're seeking something of satisfaction, like you even talked about earlier, or the pressure everyone else is doing that maybe I'm missing out on something. And it's like inside of that, it's supposed to promise them that they're going to get something more than what they do. And it's maybe that's why it keeps going there. It's because maybe in this quick moment, it brings you something, and just like a quick moment brings you like, it's all it can suffice you is like just a teasing moment, but nothing to last, which is why you have to keep going back to it. And I've been looking into the why we do things, and it's not just with alcohol, but many different things. Why we do the things is so important because it reveals so much about ourselves. If you had to
What we
answer just
value,
those things,
right?
yeah, what you value, yeah, and even who you do them for. Because I think we have a lot of people that are doing things that maybe they know they shouldn't do, but they're doing them for the wrong person. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, I'm doing this to try and feel accepted by a group of people,
Yeah.
or I'm doing this to try and make so that I can maybe feel better about myself, that I can maybe get to a certain status that maybe I couldn't on himself without it. And so I'd ask everyone these questions, whether that be something you're contemplating, and that's alcohol, if you're doing it, if you're drinking alcohol, or you're contemplating it, or maybe you're having the pressures around you, vaping,
anything.
drugs, sex, all
because
these
just
different
because
things.
you're not drinking alcohol, but you're vaping, like,
Oh, yeah.
that's how, like I said,
Right.
don't
trade
point
one
at
for
the
the-
last person
Yeah.
in the race to justify your position.
And I'm glad
in the
you
race.
said, and it's so true. Whatever that thing might be, ask yourself this question: why am I doing it, and who am I doing it for? You know that one of the cool things. I think I'm glad you said even vaping. I heard a story one time because we looked into this idea of sin. There's a guy named John Wesley, and John Wesley was an English theologian and evangelist, and who helped kind of spread the revival movement in the Church of England. You might know like the Methodist leader. And anyways, the story goes that he once asked his mother, Susanna, and says, "What is sin?" Have you ever heard that? What she says? I I remember reading this quote and I'm thinking, I'm not a mother, but I'm a father, and I hope I can give like an answer that's like this. And I don't know how it actually was, but this is how she, in the story, says that she responded to him. Her quote. She says, "Whatever weakens your reason, impairs the tenderness of your conscience, obscures your sense of God, takes off your relish for spiritual things, whatever increases the authority of the body over the mind, that thing is sin to you, however innocent it may seem in itself."
Yeah. And I'll tell you one thing that hits home that always makes a lot of people uncomfortable is our relationship with food.
Yeah.
You know, there's something that we don't talk about too, but that's
Right.
It's good because you're giving in to something,
Right.
You know, and that's part of it too. But that's a great way. Go through it again and let's maybe break down.
Whatever weakens your reason.
Right. So like that's a great example of giving an excuse, right?
Yeah.
Of like, well, it's Halloween or it's it's our senior year,
Right.
Like whatever, that's weakening your reason. The
Exactly.
moment you have to, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I was just saying something the other day, like, quit celebrating your birthday. Like celebrate the new job, the promote, like celebrate the accomplishment. Let's not celebrate. Like I know it's Cinco de Mayo today, but
Yeah.
like no one won anything.
Right.
It's just May 5th.
Yeah.
It's like, don't go out and like drink 16 Coronas because
Right.
it's May 5th. It's okay.
Yeah.
Just
No,
do-
it's true. But and that's it. You can. That's the whole just fine. Anything. If you're looking for something, you'll find.
Yeah.
Right. Impairs the tenderness of your conscience.
Yeah, and I think that impairing the tenderness of your conscience is, like maybe Matt drops $5 when he leaves, and I might think Matt can afford to lose $5.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that goes with the first one too. And maybe I just swoop that $5 up and I take it.
Right.
All right. And so that tenderness of consciousness is like we talked about, that fear factor where younger was bigger, and then the older we get, it goes away.
Yeah.
Because there's that tenderness is not there anymore. It's tough. You get a hardened heart, hardened mind, and I think it's important to explain that one because it's good because it's like I think of when I went into 6th grade. I remember the kids are older than me that I knew, like 7th grade. Like, this guy's got cigarettes. I'm like, dude, you got cigarettes at school? I'm like, dude, you're crazy. You're gonna throw your life away.
Yeah.
And by like 7th grade, I had cigarettes at school. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I just wasn't doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And so it was that I had that tenderness. I had it in my heart to be good, but I was following the false promises of bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Obscures your sense of God.
And I think that's one that's probably the most lost in society today.
Mm.
Because back to what you said, I mean, that was probably the most profound thing from this conversation was you were worried about the reputation of your father, right? And your relationship with your father and how people would look at that, right? Like I said earlier, don't worry about what other people think.
Yeah.
But in the event of carrying your behavior representing somebody else,
Right.
it's important. And I think that ties to that big time because it's almost not cool in a lot of settings to be like, I'm not drinking because it's part of my commitment I've made to God. I would
Yeah.
love. I mean, if my son said that to somebody, I would be in tears.
Yeah.
If he's like, my dad's gonna kick my butt,
Right.
like I don't care about that as much,
Yeah.
but I appreciate being part of the thought. But I don't want it to be out of fear. I want it to be out of
Yeah.
honor for God,
Right.
right? And I think that your fear was honor
Yeah.
as well, because I mean that's why I think even today you guys have such a great relationship, and
Right.
in the man you are today.
Yeah.
Is because that honor is so important, and that honor to God is
Right.
so important because it's forever. It's not what's the word? It's unconditional,
Yeah.
right? And like as opposed to I could do something so that you're my friend, but then the moment you're not my friend anymore, that no longer is my important
Right.
reason to not do something. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the next one?
It's true. Next is takes off your relish for spiritual things.
Yeah, I think that it's just creating more of an indulge in earthly things.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
dude, I've been guilty of that plenty of times.
Right. Then whatever increases the authority of the body over the mind.
Yeah.
And then she finishes with, that thing is sin to you, however innocent it may seem in itself.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, even if it's the clothes we wear, how often you check yourself out in the mirror?
Yeah.
Like how It just that stuff, the selfies,
Right.
like there's some fun, but there's some of that stuff that's
Yeah.
drawing you away from God, drawing you more into you and of the earthly things, and
Yeah.
it can be innocence to a bad place can go very fast.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Uh,
It is so true. I heard someone else say that sin, the abuse of a harmless thing, is the essence or beginning of sin. And it's so true. I'm glad we had this time. We need to close now, but these are some big things, whether we're talking about alcohol or whether we're just simply talking about cultural pressures and motives and justification for why we do the things. If you could take away something here, ask yourself when it comes to whether that be alcohol, vaping, drugs, or sex, ask yourself, why am I doing it? Why do I do the things I do? And who am I doing them for? And a great indicator that maybe there's something off there is if you're looking for something and you spend more work trying to justify why you're doing it, or you're giving an excuse that takes any kind of blame off yourself and completely onto other people. That's a great reason that's a great red flag, I should say, of why you should maybe be looking at this. Also, if who you're doing it for isn't the right person, that's going to change everything. And we don't have time to really flesh that one out. We could spend another 20 minutes just talking about that one right there. I will say there is a level of purpose that comes when your motive is right. And for me, I think it came to switch something even for me is when I talked about why I did the things I did and who I did them for, there was a natural thing where the answer to those questions could have been found out of whether that be fear or even reverence to my parents. But I remember the decision really became owned in my life when I found Jesus, like not just because I'd been around Jesus all my life. And I never was, I feel like it was always like a lack of me making that really commitment, being like, I get it, versus I went through emotions
what
a whole
that
lot.
really means.
What
to
that really
you,
means, exactly.
Not
Not just
to
I'm
go
saying
through
it.
Yeah, right.
And so for me, when the who I was doing it for was greater than myself, and it was like a higher purpose than just simply I was doing that so I could feel good or I could be accepted, but it was, man, I'm doing this for Jesus. Like I'm doing this for God. My purpose I'm finding is a purpose that He's given to me. I can find it through Him. All of a sudden, it was like I had put this, it was, I don't know I had to explain it, but it was just kind of like, it just became so much more real to me and so much easier for me to like make some of these decisions. Because the easiest person to be, I always say the weakest person you can be accountable to is yourself. Right. Because there's no one easier to convince to do something different than yourself. My feelings can convince myself to do anything else. Yeah. And if I'm only doing it just simply for myself, why I do things I do, who am I doing it for? If I'm just doing it for me, then tomorrow me might have a whole different way of thinking and change I could do anything tomorrow if I feel like it. Versus I started doing things even more than just my parents, because as soon as I moved out of my parents' home, it was like, okay, they don't know everything I do anymore. They can't see everything, so I'm not worried too much. You just see, like that level came down, but now it's like I'm doing it for God. Yeah. I'm doing it, and then it's cool. We talked about the marketing that the enemy does on some of these things. Yeah. The Bible is very straightforward, and Jesus is really straightforward, right? And one of my verses I absolutely love is when it says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." And I would say this to anybody watching too is, and I'm not doing this as just like this cheesy Christian line, but there is nothing better than Jesus. And there is nothing that will bring that satisfaction that you're looking for, maybe why you're doing it, whether that be you're trying to escape, trying to feel accepted, trying to feel valued, trying to feel like you have purpose. There is no thing or no person that you can find that in that's really going to bring it all together than the one who created you. The one who created you in the sense that He would be that thing for you. And Adam can even testify to that.
That is to the massive testify. Because for me, I'm 40. I spent a lot of my life trying to fill this void. I've awesome sports cars. I've traveled everywhere you can think of. Stayed at the nicest things. I've partied. I've done all these. I've done it all. I've done all these things that we usually pursue to find fulfillment, and I always had a hole every time, right? And then when I got to understand Jesus, and I understand that that's actually the first thing that I need in my life. And I'll be honest, I've got away from it, even being away from church with this pandemic and watching the news. I found I needed a little reborn.
Yeah.
Right? I needed that because I found myself. But I needed it to happen because God took me a little further away from Him. And we're all guilty of doing it sometimes because we realize how easy it is to fall away when we lose our focus. And
Right.
Pastor Larry's message Sunday was, I felt like it wasn't a ton of people. I felt I was the only person in church. I was like, dude, he was reading my mind. He's a
mind reader.
Right, he's on the
Imagine him
telephone.
being your father.
And that's what I was thinking. I was like, man, it's right. I lost some of my priorities. I lost some of my values. I'm watching the news and I'm focused on social media. I'm arguing with strangers. I'm like, my mind is not in the place that it should be. And I'll tell you the number one factor is I wasn't focused on God like I should be. And it's amazing. I had this like personal revival, even on Sunday. And I feel like a new man. But I'm aware of it enough to be able to look back and go, you thought you were fine until you realized you were drifting away from shore, right? Shore doesn't. Next thing you know, you're panicked. You're out in the ocean. If you've ever been like in the water and you're fine, you're playing, and all of a sudden you're like, dude, that's far. That's a far shore. You drifted away in the current. It happens so fast, right? And sometimes, depending on the situation, sometimes it's a mindset thing. Sometimes it can be you start physically making bad decisions, right? And so you got to stay focused on Jesus. It is the fulfilling thing, but behind all things. And there's going to be times when Jesus is going to look boring compared to what your friends are doing. Jesus is not going to look as fun as some of these other decisions the other people are making. But know that He's eternal. It's forever. The marketing, false advertising promises that are behind these other things, they're not real. They're fake. Just like the fruit might look good, but that ain't worth taking.
No. And I'll tell you this, if you hang out with us, and man, we have more fun on accident than you probably do on purpose with your friends. And that's just because I think we both found the best thing.
Absolutely.
And, man, there's the joy. I ended with this story. I was on a campus in West Virginia on a missions trip, and I did a what are the odds? I don't know if you ever played that game. Pretty much someone says, what are the odds you go and do this? Like, what are the odds you go up to that group and say this line? And I would give you the odds of like 1 out of 10. And then someone else would be like, all right, 3, 2, 1, and you both say a number between 1 and 10. And if it lands on it, the odds are the same. Like you say 3, I say 3, you have to do it. I lost a what are the odds on a West Virginia trip. And so we had a kind of like, it would be like our youth service, but there was like their big young adult service. And it was this, you could tell, this total group of potheads, for lack of better words. And they were all gathered together. You could tell. And they were like, okay, they wrote on a piece of paper what I had to say, and they didn't let me see it. They made me like walk over there, and as soon as I got to them, I opened it up. Kind of like in a practical joke. So I walk over to I walk over to this group of students, and I was like, "What's up, guys?" And they just kind of like, it took them a while to understand that I was there, but once they did, I opened in my paper and I read it, and it literally said this: "Do you know where you can get the most high?" Oh no, sorry, it was like, "Do you know where you can get the best high with the most high?" Come to service tonight. And I'm dead serious, the most cheesy line I've ever said to potheads was like, do you know where you can get the best high? And they're all, I remember as soon as I said that, they like leaned in. I was like, with the most high.
I'm going to lose that. Or use that.
You should.
That's awesome.
And anyway, the same is true of Jesus. You're looking for something that's going to just be everything you're looking for. Jesus is the answer. And that's not cheesy. That's just reality. All right? We love you guys. We'll see you soon.